Right. Welcome everybody to the first of the Streaming Video Alliance webinars for 2019. I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join us for a really interesting, cool topic with a lot of knowledgeable, experienced, technical speakers. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Now, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, so if you have colleagues that couldn't attend or whatnot, we'll send out a link to the recording and you can shoot that over to them, excuse me, so that they can all listen in on the discussion. Now, what we'll do first is we'll go through our panelists. So I'll give them a little bit of time to talk about themselves, and then once we're done, we'll jump into questions, discussion on the way. So let's start off with Guillaume Bichot from Broadpeak.
Hi, everybody. So yes, my name is Guillaume Bichot, and I joined Broadpeak 6 months ago. I'm currently the head of exploration. So Broadpeak is a company that design products and solutions for content delivery network, CDN, in particular for telcos, telecom operators, and also for content providers. So my work in Broadpeak is to prepare the next step, So the exploration team is a team that look a little bit ahead in order to, to pick up the right technology for the right problem. Previously, I worked for Technicolor, as I said, and I was, I worked for Technicolor during more than 20 years, and I was the network evolution head already. So my background, as you understood, is very network centric and focused.
Fantastic, thank you, Guillaume. Now let's hear from Johan.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Johan Bolin. I am the Chief Product and Chief Technology Officer of Edgeware. I have been with Edgeware for 4.5 years, and I have roughly 20 years of experience from the telecom and media industry. So I've been working both on the vendor side, but also on the pay TV side. And a few words about Edgeware. Edgeware develops and provides both CDN, but also solutions for origins and nowadays also playout products for both telcos, but also for broadcasters and content providers.
Fantastic, thank you, Johan. Now we'll turn to Keith.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name's Keith Weinberger. I'm Director of Product Management for Video Solutions at Limelight Networks. I've been in the video space for several years, and I handle the product management responsibilities for essentially video cloud services that are provided by Limelight, in addition to the core services of Limelight Networks, which is a global CDN with obviously video and storage and security packages that are available for customers as well.
Great, thanks, Keith. And now we'll hear from Josh.
Hello, everyone. This is Josh Presnell. I'm the CTO at Panthera. I've been with the company for going on about 8 years now. Panthera is focused on the offline user experience, centrally through Download to Go technology, but also through using Download to Go and offline for other user experiences to increase engagement with video. Prior to Panthera, I actually worked in the military services space, doing signals intelligence and chem biodefense. So bringing the sort of real-time, high quality, high reliability environment from that into the mobile development world has been my passion for many years now.
Very cool. And last but definitely not least, we have Pierre-Louis from StreamRoot.
Hello everyone. Very happy to be joining you today. So I'm the CEO and one of the founders at StreamRoot. We've been launching the company about 6 years ago, really focusing on client-side video delivery technology. So our mission is to help scale and optimize the streaming workflow, leveraging the device as a key piece of the delivery architecture. Our core primary product has been and still is peer-to-peer CDN technology using WebRTC as one of the core components, and basically providing these services for broadcasters, OTT platform, but also some ISP. And yeah, very happy to be talking about all this cool technology around the table.
Fantastic. All right, so set a little context for this discussion. You know, obviously, video delivery, you know, both live and on demand, is constantly changing, right? New technologies are coming around, better ways to store things, compute, you know, different architectures. And so what I wanted to do was kind of just get, you know, the ideas and thoughts about video delivery for 2019, maybe some of the things that are starting to happen or some of the things that companies are experimenting with, you know, from this panel of really distinguished technology folks, right? You know, these guys have all been around for a long time looking at technology. It's as it relates to, you know, both video delivery and other things, but, you know, mainly they've been in this space of trying to get video to people for a long time. And so that's the kind of context, right? So we can obviously talk about user experience, and maybe we'll do that a little bit, or, you know, maybe sort of, you know, how OTT is shaping up from a technology standpoint. But what I really want to focus in on are a lot of these, you know, issues and ideas and things that are going to really drive or change the way that video is delivered, right? Because we know from the Cisco VNI report that video traffic is going to take up and will continue to take up a tremendous amount of, you know, of the IP bandwidth that's, you know, floating around the world. People are watching video from all sorts of devices all the time, you know, over the internet, on unmanaged and managed networks, and it's filling up everywhere. We've got to figure out ways to deliver it more efficiently. So the first question that I really want to start off with, and what I'll do is I'll ask a question, and I'll pick on somebody to start, and then everybody else can just chime in, you know, as you feel the need to. But the first question, and I'm going to point this to Pierre-Louis over at StreamRoot, because they've really been trying to tackle this. But, you know, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges in video streaming today? And you can focus in on, you know, live, I guess, but you talk about VOD if you want to, but really want to hear sort of what you think some of those key challenges are today.
Yeah, thank you. So basically what we've seen in the industry for the past few years is, and we're going to talk about it, is one of the scaling. The problem of scaling the architecture, especially for big events. And when you're talking about scaling, it's not just being able to feed the content, but it's also to being able to provide a good quality and go to all the different networks. We are in the OTT space. When you have 1 million concurrent connected users out there, there's 1 million different experience, because you can be on a different ISP, on a different subnet, on a different device, a different application, different bitrate, different streaming format. I mean, there's so many components that the monitoring exactly what is doing on all these devices is becoming very complicated, and optimizing it for everyone is becoming very complicated. So what we've seen with our customers is basically trying to optimize the entire chain from the, sourcing of the content and coding up to the end user device. And I think there's a good representation of the people that are working on all that chain around the table. So really scaling the architecture and making sure that whatever the end user device or end user condition, network condition, we are able to serve the content to all these guys with a good quality. And that's really been our focus, and that's why we all taking that is being in the device, being in the client, and looking at everything that is actually going on in the device to make smart decision, because there's so many different options out there to watch your content right now, that is becoming very challenging, especially when you have millions of users.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that today? What kind of challenges, do the rest of you guys see to video delivery?
Yes, Guillaume speaking. I would add, yes, of course, scalability is one of the biggest challenge for live video content delivery as well, by the way, and without compromising quality, of course. I would add even that it's going to be more and more challenging regarding the flexibility. I mean, it's not only that it has to scale, but it has to scale with flexibility. I mean, it scale rapidly, quickly, fast, and scale on, scale off fast. That's what maybe will be new, and when we will see that maybe the cloud networking, the cloud technology, or the NFV technology may help for that. And the second challenge that we should talk about is today's challenge is the latency, of course. With AVR streaming, latency is something that everybody is tackling right now, but is still one of the biggest challenges today.
Yeah, I'll jump in too. This is Keith. I agree with both of those prior points. Scaling and latency are really critical. One thing I'll say about latency is we are being compared by the end users to broadcast, to cable. And so our latency and quality needs to achieve broadcast level latency and broadcast level quality. And the trade-off between latency that has been traditional with HLS and Dash delivery over the top versus broadcast has caused some issues because the chunk streaming has always been a little slower, and consumers are asking for a better match with broadcast latency. But even beyond those challenges, I think what's also coming on the horizon is the desire for the end users to have a more immersive and more interactive experience, given that it's digital, given that it's internet, given that they're used to interacting with interfaces on their mobile devices and their computers. I think that is going to become a large focus in the future for adding interactivity with video.
And this is Johan Bolin talking, if I could just add maybe 5 cents on that. First of all, I very much agree with Keith. I think that how the digital distribution pipeline will actually change the formats and the concepts is one of the most interesting things to look into 2019 and beyond. Another of the challenges that I think is starting to become an issue is the challenge of fragmentation of devices. I mean, it used to be that for watch broadcast, you could buy you could use your 20-year-old TV and still use it to watch broadcast. Today, if you have a device that is 5 years old, it might be difficult to get the service to work on it. And that is something that can partly be solved by technology, but to some extent, we're also going to need to educate users that you can't assume that a very old device will be capable of delivering a modern service.
Yeah, those are all really good points.
Yeah. This is Josh, just to kind of put a tail end on the conversation on the topic. I think that a lot of what the folks have been talking about in terms of challenges for streaming centers around what I think is a trend in the industry, which is that a lot of the OTT players, if you look at the offerings that are coming out to users, we've figured out how best to get our content in front of the users. The applications are consistent. The look and feel is very similar. The overall engagement with the customer across the ecosystem is fairly similar. I think the challenges that individual OTT providers are going to start to see more is a question of differentiation. And the other panelists talked about some very important things in terms of differentiation, in terms of making sure we can scale, get the network delivery as optimum as it can be, never have delays, decrease latency. All of those things are giving the best quality experience to the users that we can. But on top of that, I think there's going to be a challenge, especially from the product level folks, to try and find differentiating factors beyond just the content. What can we offer to users via technology that gives them both a quality experience but a increased engagement with the great content we're all trying to put in front of them.
Oh, absolutely, right? I mean, that's, differentiation amongst providers is definitely something that's, that's a challenge. Actually, I kind of want to harp on something that it seems like everyone was really talking about, which is scale. Now, I know that we talk about scale a lot of times in reference to live streaming, right? So what happens when 1 million, 2 million, 5 million people tune into a live stream at the same time? But I think it also has applications to on-demand content, right? What happens when 2, 5, 10, 20 million users want to download something at the same time, or access something at the same time? And obviously CDNs help, right? That's great. Everything's cached. It's all regional, but still, there are scalability problems with that as well. So there's an issue I don't think we've actually reached yet, which is true scale of delivery. So we've talked about 1 million or 2 million concurrents, but what happens when we hit 10? What happens when we hit 20, right? When we talk about broadcast television, half the US population could turn the TV on at the same time and be okay. And obviously that's, with a lot of different network providers, but still, it's a lot of people at the same time. So I'm kind of curious. I'm going to pick on Josh for this question first, because I think he comes from a very interesting perspective with Panthera, because Panthera really, deals with this concept of download to go and sort of, pioneering that model and bringing it to a lot of the OTT providers. So I kind of want to hear him sort of give his 2 cents first, and then everyone else obviously jump in. But, how do we solve this scale problem?
Sure, and it's kind of interesting that you mentioned the scale problem in terms of download, because that's a challenge that we've seen working with some of the CDN providers. So the concept of streaming, especially if you just use like a simple VOD case, the player is getting segments at a relatively slow pace. It's going and it's looking for certain quality shifts. The network profile is pretty reasonable. As you start adding simultaneous streamers to that equation, it gets a little more interesting, but each individual user is still only requesting a couple of video segments every couple of seconds, which is reasonable in terms of network. Now, when you start trying to do download and everyone is obsessed about speed, we're now requesting the entire video's worth of segments in as short a time as possible, and you have to handle that at scale with potentially millions of users downloading content at the same time. And what we've seen is that CDNs that have been tuned specifically to best support the streaming use case can't keep up with a download use case, because they detect that as network abuse and shut off the pipes. So we're getting network disconnects as we start to scale, because the CDNs just throw their hands up and say, I'm not going to deal with you. So that's been an interesting challenge and one we've been working on. From the broader perspective, the interesting statistic, we came out with some research, even I think just this last month, is that a fairly significant percentage of people who are watching downloaded content are doing so when their device is actually online. And they're doing that because there's a consistency of the overall experience. I can download a high quality rendition of the video on my home network relatively quickly, and then I play back that download. Even if I still have Wi-Fi and in my home, I have no buffering, no quality drops, no concerns about dips in network when my son wants to go and play his Xbox. The consistency of the overall experience is very key with that. And we can use downloads to shift the delivery of the content to opportune times. So the ability to say, I want to download all of this content at 1 o'clock in the morning so that I have it available to me the next day, alleviates some of the network congestion during peak times. So I think that we're going to see from a potential technology to help with scale issues, increased usage of the offline use case in order to help work through some of that content, especially as we start getting forward into more 4K and even 8K video and things to support VR and all the other great things that are coming down the pike.
So anybody else want to jump in about sort of thoughts about how to solve the scale problem. Obviously, that's one aspect of it, but what about live as well? How do we deal with this issue?
Yeah, maybe I could try to elaborate a little on that. This is Johan Bolin talking again. So the first thing, I think Josh has a very good point in that while we are tended to focus on live, as a matter of fact, in percentage of total viewing hours, linear and live are decreasing. So soon we will be in, if you will, a bigger challenge, because then we have a huge number of simultaneous users on demand content, which are also increasingly with a wide popularity curve, if you will. So you need big disks and big caches, and also increasingly high capacity ingest bandwidth to cope with the cache misses and so on. So I think that's, I'm sad to say I don't have a very simple solution to it, but I think we have a new problem coming up on the horizon shortly after the live that everyone is focusing on right now, and that actually might be more tricky to solve.
Yeah, this is I want to add to that. From a Limelight perspective, we're in a special space because we are primarily a CDN, and we have the video cloud services that are attached to it, and we're able to provide the video transcoding and packaging and delivery, which then is put directly onto the CDN. In terms of CDN, our history is downloads, and then we have been moving rapidly towards supporting live streaming and video streaming. So we've faced all the challenges that have been talked about, and the way we look at that is the CDN needs to be constantly improved. So we're constantly measuring and improving efficiency for video startup time, for buffer rates, for bitrate delivery. We went through a massive effort to get rid of spinning disks, and we're all solid state. And then we've also worked to develop our own TCP stack on our edge servers for the CDN, so that we can eke out as much efficiency as possible throughout the world, in addition to expanding out the number of POPs we have. So it's a constant challenge. It's a challenge that has to be faced on all fronts all at the same time. Quite a fun time, if you will, getting the CDN to be constantly improved, and in addition to following the trends that are needed for video delivery.
Yes, Guillaume speaking. Agree. I mean, from broad peak perspective, the telcos, because we're working a lot with the telcos, they have to, enhance their CDN. They have to deploy more deeply their CDN. They have to expand their CDN. This is absolutely a must. But there is also especially for the live, there is this the multicast ABR technology that we strongly believe in, and that sees this year in 2019 you will see a lot of deployment and a lot of announcements according to our current business. Multicast ABR is really key because it's it's obvious, right? If you have hundreds, thousands of streaming sessions, concurrent streaming sessions, multicast is really the solutions to to solve the scaling issue. But today's, in the upcoming years, this solution is mostly for the telcos, because the telcos own the multicast capacity. But what we're going to see also is a way or different ways to open this multicast capability for content providers, for other players. And that will be really a real solution, not only for telcos, but for content providers too, or broadcasters. For content providers, they have, of course, the solution of the CDN as a service, They have what we call the CDN selector, where you can be attached to several CDN and select the CDN function of several criteria. You have local caching, of course. This is very, very important, a la Netflix. And this going to be this local caching technology is going to be developed tremendously, I think, and we will see why. I mean, I can already say that it is basically because this is because we will rely on the cloud technology, on NFV maybe, and yeah, that's really what the way we should solve this scaling issue.
Yeah, I would add that on top of that, this is Pierre-Louis from Streamroots. There's been, I want just to go back to the introduction point to say just a few million concurrent connected users, but how do we do that when there's much more users connecting? And this is something we've seen during the last World Cup at Streamroots in one of the many European countries when we been delivering the World Cup. I think that the most popular streams were in the million connected users range, where the audience on TV was about 20 million. So that's like a 20x difference between these two sources, between traditional broadcast and OTT. And obviously, all tech is been to, on top of everything that's been said around ABR multicast, deep caching, CDN, peer-to-peer. We believe that the peer-to-peer aspect of it is going to also be very important part of this mix. Obviously, the beauty of peer-to-peer is that it scales well. The more users you have, the more connections you can create, and the more locally you can source the content from. And this is really dynamically choosing the right source by choosing the right source between the CDN. Just like Guillaume said about having a CDN selector, switching between potentially a local CDN that is on the ISP already implemented, or to a traditional CDN like Limelight. But also the CDN selector can also choose from another source, which is the peer-to-peer network, and all the users that are around you, and that can feed you, because in terms of network perspective, if you're under the same ISP in the same area, it makes sense to get the content from it. So what we believe is that, and I believe, is that there's really a combination of solutions. There's not a single one solution that's going to solve this problem, especially if we're talking about a 20x growth in terms of spike over the coming few years. We will need to have a combination of networking and software technologies.
And this is Josh. As I said, I can't agree more with that last point. Is that I think that the end solution is going to end up being the cooperation and combination of many of the technologies from many of the panelists, and there's it's going to be a cooperative solution, not a solution in silo.
Yeah, that's a great way to end that top, leads right into the next question. Because obviously there is no one provider, although maybe there's some providers out there who feel that that's incorrect, that there's no one person that's going to solve this problem of scalability, right? I mean, that's not the way it's going to work. It's going to be a very collaborative effort, amongst those technology providers and network providers in the industry who are intrinsically involved in providing delivery, at scale. And so the next question I had, is really about it's about those solutions. And maybe this is, maybe a little bit too into the weeds for this discussion, but we're going to try out this question anyway. And I'm going to pick on Pierre again, Pierre-Louis. What does the delivery architecture of tomorrow look like, right? I mean, obviously we've had CDNs, we've had network operators, we've had people in the cloud, out of the cloud, their own gear, not their own gear. We've had very, deliberate ways to architect a delivery network. But, Pierre-Louis, you guys have got some interesting technology. Josh, you're talking about maybe involving the edge device as part of the delivery chain. Keith, I'm sure Limelight's got ideas about, how do we leverage the edge and other things to get, content to users. So I'm curious, do you have any top of the mind ideas about how delivery architectures might change, starting in 2019 and moving forward? And again, we'll start off with Pierre-Louis.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to the kind of combination of technology. I think this is what we've seen evolving over the last few years. I mean, when we started, as a company, we are still seeing a majority of the market that we're using basically one CDN and a commercial CDN that was used. And we've seen the multi-CDN approach evolving. Most of the broadcasters out there now are building an architecture with several different vendors. I've seen lately, we've seen also more and more people that in combination of these vendors, they are building their own architecture, perhaps not to handle the entire traffic, but to handle the day-to-day traffic, or like, let's say 50% of the traffic. Going to work in collaboration with ISP to build out the architecture, to have either direct peering agreement with them or putting their own boxes, a little bit like Netflix has been doing at a much bigger scale. And now we're seeing that this kind of the natural extension of that is bringing the edge even further within the device, and leveraging the device as a way of either doing pre-positioning of the content like we talked just before, doing peer-to-peer technology to leverage the device as a mini CDN POP, or also using the device as a CDN selector and changing the route directly from the client side the client side library. So it's really, I think this is where it's going, is using different technologies, and your traffic is not going to be handled by one single provider, but it's going to be sustained by a handful of technology. It is adding complexity, definitely. So that's going to be a challenge for broadcasters to build out all this complex architecture, but it's adding a lot of scalability, reliability, and for the end user at the end, the best user experience. So this is what we've seen on our side, especially for the content providers that don't operate and own an ISP network.
Yes, I fully agree with Pierre-Louis. We also imagine a mix of solutions for providing this intelligent and adaptive delivery. Absolutely right. And we think that, and I think then one of the enabler of this is the virtualization, is what I call network on demand, that will be proposed by telcos, ISPs. You know, thanks to this cloud computing, let me give you an example. So today we deploy our, cache machine, cache server in the POP, point of presence. So let's imagine that tomorrow, instead of deploying the physical device, it's already the case, by the way, today, we deploy an instance, right, a virtual machine. So, and let's imagine that all telcos are equipped in their POPs with some form of cloud computing in a way that you can deploy your instance very quickly. So then you can deploy very quickly, almost instantaneously, a CDN, right? It would be kind of, or let's say, some kind of CDN on demand, or let's say a part of your CDN instantaneously in one or several telcos. So that's where we have to go, and that's where we go, I think. So this is thanks to NFV, to cloud computing. As Pierre-Louis said, we will have several players in the chain: content provider, ISP telcos, CDN delivery operators. All these guys will be dynamically and maybe temporarily connected on a session basis, and possibly relying on blockchain technology, for instance.
Yeah, and this is Keith. In the Limelight world, there's a lot of similarities to what have been said. You know, at the core and heart, of course, we need to continue to improve the capabilities of our CDN. We've got a fiber backbone that connects our POPs all around the world, and then we're continually upgrading those POPs and adding more software efficiency, et cetera. But we're also reaching out and working with partners and in pushing more capability of processing to the edge. So we're working to get expansion of our POPs, working with edge gravity and getting our ability to deploy POPs at ISPs across the world through the edge gravity arrangement. And then we're also working on, we also have actually today a compute at the edge type of service called ArcLight, which allows for some header and request manipulation that are customized to customers. And we're working towards a more powerful edge compute that can perform more intense functions at the edges. So we're working on, the architecture at all levels, and we're trying to reach down into the edges as our frontier to get more processing closer to the end users.
Maybe I could you could actually give. This is Johan Bolin talking again. So an example. I think it was Pierre-Louis who mentioned that today the amount of streaming is only, or the number of broadcasted, the amount of broadcast is 20 times the amount of streaming, and as a it's not actually the case in Sweden. If you look at the World Cup this summer or last summer, actually in Sweden that figure was more 1 to 2, meaning that twice as much was broadcasted as streamed. But still, that means huge amount of streaming. And the only reason why that worked was because all of the providers who delivered the World Cup used a multi-CDN strategy and orchestrating several different CDNs in order to get out to the viewers. And it seemed, I think, and that's several. I think everyone here has mentioned that using multiple technologies and definitely even multiple CDNs and multiple networks will be required to achieve what we're facing. And you need nowadays also to have pretty clever tools to decide how to route the streams, because it's not only that you have the technical limitations in peering and interconnect, you also have commercial aspects to consider when doing this. So I know I believe that the control plane, if you will, for how to manage sessions in a multi-technology and multi-network environment will be increasingly important to achieve both the traffic but also the business case for doing this. Just as an observation from Sweden.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I definitely feel that you guys are all on the right track, right? I think it's going to be a collaborative effort. And Johan, kind of something you just said sort of really got me thinking was this idea of this control plane, right? What orchestrates delivery of a video asset across multiple technologies or within multiple networks. So it's almost like the architecture of tomorrow for delivery is, kind of virtualized in a sense, right? It's a combination of, technologies and providers that come together in sort of this, meta delivery architecture. That's a, really interesting idea. And, thank you very much for the insight from Sweden. I know Sweden's very progressive when it comes to streaming. And so that's very interesting to hear. So the next question that I wanted to ask you guys kind of dovetails along with that. And I know this may seem like maybe a really stupid question. Maybe like, of course it's important. But the question I had was, really, and I'm gonna talk to. I actually want to pick on Johan first. But how much of a role will the cloud ultimately play in streaming? I mean, I know we talked about it, but there are folks like Limelight, have physical networks and other CDNs that have physical networks. But and Guillaume mentioned this quite a bit, sort of this concept of network virtualization. Is the cloud going to be the place that maybe is the link between all the different providers in this sort of meta delivery architecture? But Johan, give me your thoughts on the cloud and delivery.
I think that the cloud will be, it already is, and it will be increasingly important. First, I just mentioned that this orchestration and control layer is an application that fits perfectly within the concept of cloud. So from that perspective, cloud will definitely play a very important role. Then when it comes to actually delivering the traffic, if you will, I think what you first need to do is to define what you mean with the cloud. because the cloud tends to be today something that is not very local and pretty far away, and that might not be a very good idea for streaming. But actually, geographical distance is not so relevant. What is relevant is the network distance, if you will. So it's kind of what kind of capacity and how many hops away and so on are the clouds. And as a matter of fact, they're getting a lot closer. So while cloud will definitely be very important for the control aspects of delivery, I think it will also play an important role in the actual delivery, and especially for applications like live and so on, where you can quite fast and conveniently spin up additional servers to help you expand the traffic, if you will. So yeah, it's a tricky question because you kind of need to define what you mean in cloud, but independent how you define it, it will definitely be important.
Yeah, this is Keith. From a Limelight and video services perspective, we look at cloud, or I'm looking at cloud as the ability to spin up additional video processing services on demand. And so, the use cases that we're looking at are things like dynamic ad insertion that's being performed at the edge node, say forensic watermarking to be able to produce a unique watermark for each individual streamer, things like that. Things that are compute intensive, but are probably best done at the edges. And we're working through how to architect that and make it possible throughout our network, because it makes sense to move that compute to the edge, but also make it elastic, make it scalable and on demand.
Yes, Guillaume speaking. As I explained, I think we think that the cloud technology will be very key, and especially not only the public cloud infrastructures as it is already today, but the private cloud infrastructure that is owned and will be exposed by the telcos. I think this will be prevalent for some of the services that we've talked about, especially, for example, the cache infrastructure. You will deploy, thanks to the cloud infrastructure owned by each of the telco, you could deploy a cache infrastructure very quickly and very simply. That's the goal of the NFV and generally speaking of this cloud infrastructure. And so that will allow network as a service, network on demand. This is, I think, very key.
That's great. So the next question I've got is now into a little more far-reaching, right? So obviously technologies are coming out, not necessarily built for video delivery or intended for video delivery, but they're being applied to it in different ways. And one of those technologies is AI, right, or machine learning, however you want to characterize it. I'm going to pick on Josh here because I know as a longtime technologist, you've probably got some opinions on, AI and what that means to video, even whether it's downloaded or streamed. I think this is going to be an interesting technology, but I'm just kind of curious to hear your thoughts on, where we're at now and where you see it going the rest of this year.
Sure. So I think one of the biggest challenges to applying something like AI to the streaming world is an old saying that I used to have back in my old computer science days is the quality in equals the quality out. It doesn't matter how much amazing algorithm, how much amazing intelligence and machine learning you can apply. If you put in bad data, you're going to get bad data out. And I think that's kind of where we're at the moment, is an impasse in the industry, particularly to where some of the really like low-hanging fruit, the best ways to apply artificial intelligence in our industry. I think about things like recommendations and user engagement and the ability to get content or understand users' behaviors in order to give them something that they're interested in watching that maybe they didn't know about before. And Netflix has spent an amazing amount of money trying to focus on exactly how to apply the best recommendations engine. In fact, they even had like $1 million prize several years ago for anyone who could improve the recommendations just by 10%. And the going in assumption is you can only use information about what that user has watched previously. Well, if you start thinking about all the information that's out there, especially if you're talking about OTT devices where, let's say we're talking about a mobile device and you have access to potentially the applications that are installed on the device. You may be able to monitor the user's history. You may be able to get things off of a user's calendar. The more we get people comfortable with the privacy considerations of accessing broader information about a particular user, the more we can apply machine learning and artificial intelligence to really give what amounts to potentially a creepy but very magical experience in terms of, hey, we know you want to watch this thing, even if you've never heard of it before. And I think that as we start moving in towards an age, especially with millennials and the younger generation that has less of a concern about some of these privacy issues, about people accessing their social media profiles and that kind of thing, we're going to be able to open up into a much broader capability for AI applied to streaming video.
Anybody else with some thoughts on AI? I mean, I know it's
yes,
hot, right? I mean, go ahead.
No, I mean, AI will be everywhere in the streaming chain. It can help already, and it helps already, but it can help a lot more in routing requests. If we consider that we're going to be more and more flexible in terms of, multicast versus unicast, for example. So, we have this multicast ABR, and this service will be open in a way that per stream, you will per service, you will decide whether it's worth to multicast it or maybe to serve it as through the unicast network. It depends of several criteria, and this is so on the it depends from the network status, but also on whether it's popular or not, the time of the day, and there are a lot of other criteria. So this can be managed by AI. There is of course the caching, whether to cache or not this content is already and it will be covered by AI. There is already in encoders, the next generation, people are working on the next generation of encoding, and they use AI instead of they try and they experiment AI in the heart of the encoder. This is called smart encoding. There is also AI for that will help a lot in more personalized ad insertion. Okay, this is not directly video streaming, but ad insertion, is part of the streaming chain. It's also we start to see some new service that pop up regarding controlling the congestion. That one of the problem regarding this scalability of streaming is the way we can control the congestion. And today, the congestion, we are relying on the, very low layers, I mean, TCP transport layers to manage this congestion, to try to control this congestion. And probably it can be also managed by AI. It would maybe a lot easier that it is done today. These are a couple of applications that AI could deal and that are related to streaming.
Yeah,
I want to jump
back on that. Sorry, this is Keith.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, because I wear two hats. I'm wearing the CDN hat and the video processing hat today. I agree totally with what he just said about using AI for proper routing and pop selection and delivery quality improvements. The only thing I'll throw out there is we're looking at AI for other kinds of video processing, backstream before it gets to the CDN. Things like using AI to detect scenes inside video and produce a companion data about the video. Also looking at it for automatic closed caption detection and delivery, translation services. And these are all very, very future things, although some may be closer than others. But I think they can all have applicability in delivering a more robust experience for end users in video.
Yeah, just a comment on the networking analysis. This is something very interesting, and I think that finding the right route using some kind of AI or machine learning capabilities is definitely very promising. We actually at Streamwood started to kind of look inside that area. So basically, as we have tens of millions of peer-to-peer connections that are created every day on our network, we are able to look at all the different routes and all the different connections between the users on all the different networks. And we're using all this data to feed our algorithm and make it smarter. So the next time there's one user on a specific ISP that is watching a content, we have a better idea on how we should match and which route should it take to get the content from. So these are super interesting areas. We're already spending quite some time on this, and we see several other applications coming.
Yeah, and I almost forgot one application that is very key and that we have already experimented a lot in my previous company, my previous lab. It's AI for troubleshooting, because with this, it's already complex, right? The streaming chain, but it's going to be more complex either. So AI is needed, and we tested it. For example, we developed an application, or let's say an agent, that is located in an intermediate device, intermediate point. That can be, for example, the home gateway, and this agent is capable of detecting where comes from the problem, whether it comes from the network or whether it comes from the home. And even more, it can also detect whether it comes from the memory of the end device or whether it comes from the memory of the server. Such kind of things, and it's going to be. It's growing, so it's a reality. It's growing. It works, and it will be a key for troubleshooting because the chain is going to be even more complex than today.
I think I could finally myself, I guess the last guy then mentioned, I don't have many examples or experiences from AI, but I have two. One is actually somewhat into the troubleshooting, but some experiments that we have been doing together with a partner that is, if you will, predictive troubleshooting. So rather than troubleshoot, it's even trying to predict based on a lot of different network data and also user data, understand, do we have an issue coming up in order to be able to take some actions before that happens. So that, I guess, is a network example. But then I think a couple of the speakers already mentioned ad insertion, and that's an area where we have a very, well, there is an example that I guess you would call AI that is not so far away, and that is today when you do ad insertion, you typically do the ad insertion at the same spots for all viewers. And as a matter of fact, that might not be the best thing. So depending on what kind of viewer you are delivering to, you might want to change at what points you do the ad insertion dynamically. And that is something that I think is not too far away, actually, to be able to do that, to adjust where you set the splice points to insert dynamic ads, depending on the content. So you analyze the content with some AI, and you decide, depending on the viewer, where are the best points, if you will, in the content to put in the ads.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, a lot of really interesting ideas around the application of AI to video streaming and the video experience. We've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left, and I wanted to, I mean, we could talk about, this topic forever. I mean, you guys are fantastic. A lot of really great answers and ideas and thoughts about, video delivery in 2019 and beyond. But where I wanted to end this was just, kind of really quickly getting all of your thoughts on the sort of key technology trend in 2019 that the streaming industry should be paying attention to, right? That's going to have maybe the biggest impact or a really measurably big impact for content providers and CDNs and network operators and technology companies. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go down the line. I'll start with Guillaume and end with Pierre-Louis. But just give me, the sort of one technology you think is going to have the most meaningful impact in video delivery for 2019. So let's start with Guillaume.
Yeah. So okay, you would say obviously, but we strongly think and really think that multicast ABR is going to be, the technology for 2019. I mean, it's already deployed, and there is a lot of ongoing trials. From our perspective, this is really the trend for video delivery in 2019. In the order, I would add also low latency, of course, because we have talked a lot about low latency, and for live streaming, of course, and it's going to be implementation are going to be deployed in 2019. And the last one would be local caching.
Fantastic, Johan.
Yeah, and it's difficult to stick to one, but two then. So first is as already mentioned, low latency. I mean, we have chunked segmentation, which has been a technology that has been around for a while, but I think you're going to see it being rolled out more widely during this year, and that will help out to push down latency further. But maybe even more important, I think, is that you're going to see much more evolutions and development around what I refer to as control plane already, and orchestration layer to manage different technologies, but even more so different networks. And I think that we should see quite some enhancements in that area during this year.
Very interesting, Keith.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to pile on the latency idea. I also think that's going to be a very, very large focus of not only the broadcasters and OTT providers, but also of the service providers. And there's a lot of options out there. There's small chunk size for chunk streaming. There's a CMAF that's being discussed, and WebRTC as a streaming protocol. I think providers are going to be looking at trying to provide all of those services and be able to serve the market as each individual use case demands, maybe perhaps a different twist on latency. The other thing that I would throw in there is, which we haven't talked too much about, is the ATSC 3.0 standard that has just been released for broadcasting. The specification documents are pretty detailed and are looking towards a future, and I think that there will be a lot of discussion about using these standards as interoperability standards, so that the various services that are out there for vendors can work together, as we have talked about earlier.
Very cool, Josh.
I think CMAF and some of the other emerging segmented video standards are definitely going to be coming down the pike. I'm personally most excited about what I'm going to call hybrid technologies, collaborative efforts between technologists that make the overall architecture greater than the sum of the individual vendors. And we're starting to see that happen more and more. Looking to collaborate with the CDNs collaborating with the upchain stream and delivery components and that kind of thing. I think that's really what I'm looking to see is a lot of the more intercooperative technologies coming out in the next couple of years.
Awesome. And finally, Pierre-Louis.
A lot of good things have been said. I would say that I believe that this year WebRTC is going to really get a push in the industry in the two different applications that we know about WebRTC. One which is the low latency use case. That's one of the way we can tackle this problem as a streaming protocol. And the second, which is more and more usage of WebRTC as a peer-to-peer transport layer to again leverage the end user capabilities and devices to offload part of the content. So yeah, I think 2019 is going to be a WebRTC year.
Fantastic. Well, again, I want to say thank you to our panelists. You guys were awesome. Really great discussion. I'm going to try to put together some blog posts around some of the answers you guys gave. So hopefully you'll see those coming in the next few weeks. And thank you to all our participants, right? Everyone who stayed on the line with us the whole time and listened to very interesting perspectives on what's going to be happening with video delivery in 2019. So again, thank you from the Streaming Video Alliance, and everyone, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend, and we will see you at our next event in March, which will be on edge computing. Everyone, take care. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.